I was driving home from a late shift, the road stretching endlessly under a sky drained of stars. My gas light had been blinking for miles, and I knew I wouldn't make it home without stopping. There was only one station open this late, an old place off the highway, barely lit, its buzzing fluorescent sign flickering like it was gasping for life. She pulled in slow, her headlights cutting across cracked pavement and an empty lot. She got out cautiously, hoodie pulled tight, scanning the desolate area. I noticed how quiet it was. No traffic, no music, just the distant hum of the cool night air pressing in on us. The station looked dead, but the pump screen lit up when she slid her card in. That's when I first saw the man, standing at the edge of the lot, just inside the glow of a broken streetlight. He didn't move. He didn't approach. He just stood there, watching her. She hadn't seen him. Or maybe she had and thought he was harmless. He looked like any other guy, tall, plain clothes, nothing that screamed danger. But something about him made my gut churn. As she finished pumping gas, he started walking toward her, calm, measured steps, like he had all the time in the world. I almost rolled down my window to call out, but before I could, he called to her. His voice was low, steady, almost friendly. He asked if she needed help. She shook her head. He kept coming. She turned to open her door. Too late. He lunged. She screamed once, short and sharp, before he clamped a hand over her mouth and drove something into her neck. A needle. Her body jerked, then went limp. He caught her before she hit the ground. I watched, frozen. He dragged her to a dark van parked behind the station and vanished inside. I wanted to move, to do something, but my hands wouldn't work. My legs wouldn't move. My mouth stayed sealed shut. By the time I snapped out of it and reached for my phone, the van was gone. No plates, no tail lights, just gone, like it had melted into the shadows. That was 3 nights ago. No news reports, no missing persons. It's like she never existed. But I saw her. And now I can't stop seeing her, especially since this morning, when a plain white envelope showed up on my doorstep. Inside was a photo. It was her, tied to a chair, eyes open, mouth gagged. And behind her was the same gas station, except this time she was looking directly at the camera. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. I stared at the photo until the sun rose, my hands trembling and damp with sweat. Her eyes, there was something in them. Not just fear. It was as if she was trying to tell me something urgent, something final. I turned the photo over, hoping for a note, a clue, anything. It was blank, but the image burned into my head like a brand. I drove back to the gas station as soon as I could. Morning light made it look less threatening, but the dread clung to me like a second skin. The attendant behind the counter looked up when I walked in, bored and half asleep. I asked if anything strange had happened a few nights ago, if anyone had seen a woman here late. He shrugged and said the cameras were out, said nothing ever happened in this town. Then he asked why I was asking. I didn't answer. I walked out, but not before noticing something through the grimy glass of the side door. A bulletin board, yellowed papers, faded posters, and one corner torn clean off like something had been yanked. Recently. My pulse jumped. I walked around the back of the station, just pavement and dumpsters. But then I saw it, a single zip tie lying near the storm drain. Red smears on the edge. Blood. That night I couldn't sit still. I kept pacing, replaying her abduction in my head over and over. The photo, her eyes, the van, the man. And then I noticed something else. Something I had missed. There was a shape in the background of the photo, a shadow on the wall of the gas station. At first I thought it was just a dark stain or trick of the light. But no, it was the outline of a handprint, dragged downward. I blew up the photo on my computer, adjusted the contrast until it jumped out at me. 5 bloody fingers, streaked like someone had tried to claw their way out. and suddenly I wasn't sure if she was the first or the only. I didn't want to admit what I was starting to believe, but I had to find her, because someone else had left a second envelope at my door. This time there was no photo, just a severed braid of her hair tied with a piece of wire. I didn't call the cops. What would I even say? That someone was leaving me pieces of a woman I watched get kidnapped but never reported? They'd ask why I hadn't stepped in, why I'd waited, and worse, what I might know. No, I had to handle this myself. I took the braid, wrapped it in plastic, and locked it in a drawer. Then I grabbed a flashlight, a knife from the kitchen, and drove back toward the highway. The gas station was different at night. The lights were dimmer, like they knew what had happened here. I parked across the road, engine off, and watched. No movement. But after an hour, a car pulled in, a beat-up sedan with only one working headlight. A man got out. Tall, same build, same calm, deliberate walk. My breath hitched. He didn't pump gas. He just walked around the side of the station and disappeared. I followed. Around back, where the dumpsters sat, there was nothing. Just silence and shadows. Then I heard it. A soft metallic clink, like something heavy being unlocked. I crouched behind the dumpster, heart slamming in my chest, and watched him crouch near a grate in the pavement I hadn't noticed before. He lifted it easily. Beneath it, a rusted ladder descending into blackness. I waited until he disappeared, then crept forward and looked down. It was a tunnel, damp concrete walls and a flickering light bulb 20 feet below. I hesitated, but I knew if I turned back, I'd never come again. So I climbed down, one rung at a time, every creak of metal echoing like thunder in my ears. At the bottom, the tunnel stretched in two directions, left toward darkness, right toward the light. I chose the light. That's when I heard it. A scream, muffled but close. A woman's scream choked off like a gasp underwater. I broke into a run. The tunnel twisted, narrowed, then opened into a room. It was cold. The walls were lined with tools, surgical ones, rusted, some with dried blood still flaking off. Chains hung from the ceiling, hooks on the walls. I didn't see her, but I did see the photos. Dozens of them, taped to the far wall, each one of a different woman. Every face frozen in a moment of terror. And the worst part, at the center of the wall was a photo of the gas station, taken from the same angle as the one sent to me. But this one had no people in it. Only a single word scrawled in blood across the glass door in the photo. Next, all part full. I stood frozen, breath fogging in the cold air of that underground chamber. The word on the photo, next, wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I turned, expecting to see him standing in the doorway, grinning, knife in hand. But the tunnel behind me was still empty. I took a shaky step backward, heart hammering, eyes scanning for any clue. A faint sound caught my ear. Breathing, shallow, controlled. It was coming from behind a metal door bolted into the side wall. I approached, careful not to make a sound. The door had a slit at eye level. I peered through it. She was inside, sitting on a soiled mattress, hands bound, duct tape across her mouth. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She tried to speak, tried to scream. I held a finger to my lips, then crouched to examine the lock. Old, rusted, simple padlock. I pulled the knife from my belt and jammed it into the loop, twisting until the metal gave a little, then snapped clean. I eased the door open. She flinched. I knelt beside her and peeled the tape from her lips. She gasped, tears spilling immediately. "He's coming back," she whispered. "You have to go." "I'm getting you out," I said. "No, he's not alone." Before I could process what she meant, a noise shot through the tunnel. A bang, like something being slammed shut. I froze. She began to tremble. "There's more than one," she whispered again. Footsteps. Heavy. Echoing. Coming fast. I pulled her up, arm around her, and ran. We barreled down the tunnel, past the wall of photos, past the chains. Behind us, the sounds grew louder. Footsteps, wet breathing, a dragging noise like something scraping along the walls. I could feel them gaining on us. We reached a rusted staircase at the tunnel's end. I shoved her up ahead of me. She climbed fast despite her bindings. I turned to look, and I saw him, not the man from the gas station. This one was different, older, filthier. A leather butcher's apron clung to his chest, soaked in stains I didn't want to identify. His face was half hidden by a crude mask, stitched together skin, maybe human. He didn't run, he just watched, a long, hooked blade swaying at his side. We burst into a room above ground, part of a decrepit house. The air stank of rot, trash piled high, furniture torn apart, dozens of women's shoes scattered across the floor. The girl screamed, pointing at the wall. There, nailed in rows, were IDs, driver's licenses. Dozens, each one with a different name, different face. All women, all gone. We didn't stop. Not after seeing those IDs. I shoved open the nearest door and dragged her through a kitchen reeking of bleach and old meat. Every surface was sticky. The walls were lined with deep gouges like someone had clawed at them in desperation. Her breaths were sharp and panicked, but she kept up, feet slipping on the warped floorboards. Then we hit the front door, locked, bolted from the inside with a thick steel bar across it. I yanked at it, but it wouldn't budge. My knife was gone, lost somewhere in the tunnel. The girl began to see, backing away toward the living room. That's when I saw it. Movement in the hallway mirror. Not ours. A figure stepping quietly out from a side room. It wasn't the masked butcher. It was the man from the gas station. He moved like a ghost, gliding across the hallway tiles, eyes blank, emotionless. A hammer hung from one hand. The other held a remote. He clicked it once. A soft chime echoed through the house. Then the lights went red. Emergency bulbs in the ceiling flickered on, and suddenly everything was drenched in crimson. I grabbed a wooden chair and smashed it against the window, but steel bars blocked the outside, reinforced, bulletproof. The house wasn't a house. It was a trap. Footsteps on the stairs, more than one pair. The butcher was coming, and someone else. Heavy breathing, rattling chains, low grunts echoing off the walls. The girl looked at me, her eyes wild. They keep us in the basement, but they bring us up when it's time. I kicked open a side closet, yanked her inside with me, and slammed it shut. We crouched in total darkness, breathing in stale air thick with dust and mold. My ears strained for any sound beyond our own panic. Then silence. Nothing. Not a footstep. Not a whisper. Until... Right against the closet door, I clamped a hand over her mouth. Then a slow scratch dragging across the wood. They knew we were inside. A voice, muffled through the door, whispered something. You shouldn't have followed. I was ready to bolt, to fight, to do anything. But then the girl said something that turned my blood to ice. We're not the first ones to hide here, look. She pointed at the wall behind us. Etched into the wood, barely visible in the dark, were tally marks. Dozens of them. And beneath them, one word, carved deep. Run. The scratching stopped. I held my breath, listening for any shift, any sign of footsteps fading away. But there was only that dreadful stillness, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes you feel like you're sinking. The girl whispered, They're waiting. They always wait. Until you think it's safe. I pushed against the back of the closet, running my hands along the wall. Rotten drywall crumbled at my touch. Behind it, wooden slats. Hollow sounding. I slammed my shoulder into it. Once. Twice. On the third hit, it cracked open and gave way to a dark crawl space filled with insulation, cobwebs, and cold, musty air. No idea where it led. No choice either. We slipped through. I pulled her behind me as we crawled. Dust filled our lungs. Nails jutted from beams like teeth. Somewhere behind us, the closet door creaked open. We froze. A beam of red light stabbed into the space we had just left. A voice spoke again, this time closer. "You didn't run fast enough." We crawled faster, splinters tearing into our palms, knees scraping raw. Then we dropped into a hidden hallway, narrow, unfinished, running beneath the house. Along the walls were hooks, ropes, dried blood smeared like finger paint. The hallway led to a large wooden door, its center scarred by claw marks. The girl pulled back. "That's where they keep the worst of it." I shoved the door open. It wasn't a room. It was a display. The walls were lined with mannequins, each dressed in clothing that once belonged to someone else. Women's outfits, tattered, blood-stained. But these weren't just for show. Each mannequin wore something familiar. Clothing from the women in the photos, their names carved into the wood at their feet. In the center of the room was a metal operating table, fresh straps, fresh blood, and beside it, an old reel projector still whirring. The film played on a cracked concrete wall, a woman screaming, strapped down, begging. The man from the gas station stood calmly beside her, wiping his hands. Behind him, the butcher loomed, nodding slowly as if proud of his work. The film cut to static, then a new scene. This time, it was me, standing at the gas station, watching, frozen, and behind me, in the shadows of the lot, a third man stood watching. The girl screamed and pointed at the corner. He was here, the third one. Not the butcher, not the gas station man, someone else. A silhouette stepped out of the shadows, filming us with an old camcorder. He spoke only one word, finale. The camcorder's red light blinked in the dark, casting just enough glow to see the man behind it. He wasn't masked like the butcher, or quiet like the gas station man. This one looked different, clean, almost professional. He wore a black windbreaker, neatly zipped to his throat, and gloves that clung to his skin like they'd been custom-made. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I raised the metal pole and took a step forward. He didn't flinch. Instead, he lifted the camcorder a little higher and whispered, "Finale." A sharp, metallic click echoed behind us. Then came the sound of chains rattling and a door sliding open. The butcher had arrived. His steps were slow but heavy, echoing like gunshots through the concrete chamber. The girl gripped my arm, and I could feel her nails digging into my skin. She whispered through clenched teeth, "They're closing in. We won't get another chance." I scanned the room and spotted a ventilation grate half covered behind a shelving unit. It looked small, but big enough. I shoved the girl toward it, swinging the pole wildly at the approaching butcher. He backed off, momentarily surprised. The camcorder man laughed like it was entertainment. The girl kicked the grate in. Behind it, darkness. But air flowed through. A way out. I held them off as long as I could. Then I dropped the pole and dove into the vent behind her, just as a blade swiped the air behind my back. We crawled fast, metal scraping our knees and elbows, the sound of furious footsteps and snarled voices chasing us from behind. The shaft bent sharply and spat us out into a crawl space under the house. We scrambled forward, following faint light until we burst out behind a collapsed shed in the backyard. The woods loomed ahead, black and endless. We ran. Branches snapped in our path, animals scattered. Somewhere behind us, a voice called out, calm and close, "You're just making it worse." But we didn't stop. We reached the road after what felt like forever, stumbling into the headlights of a pickup that slammed to a stop inches from my legs. The driver, an older man, helped us in without hesitation and floored it down the road, radioing for help before we even asked. By morning, police had cordoned off the forest. The house was found. The tunnels were real. The basement was full of horrors. The butcher was gone. So was the gas station man. But the photos, the tools, and the van, they were all there. Real. They found evidence of at least 14 victims. And one survivor, the girl I'd helped. But that wasn't the part that chilled me to the bone. The part that still keeps me awake. Later that evening, when I was giving my full statement, an officer stepped into the room with a pale face and said, "We found something." He slid a folder onto the table. Inside were still frames from the camcorder footage they recovered. It showed the house, the woman, the torture. But one of the final images was a grainy shot taken from a distance, clearly from the woods, of me standing outside my own apartment. Someone had been filming me, not just that night, for days, maybe longer, and in the very last frame, a handwritten message taped to my window. "We're not done."